dunked on me. Now, let me say this. I asked the question, and I heard his response. I didn't interpret it the same way everybody else did, but for everybody out there, as we know, I've been very vocal at how irresponsible I thought it was to put Tanner Jeannot on the Predators' protection list and expose Calle Yarncroke, a useful two-way, versatile player that's won them a lot of games, as opposed to Jeannot in his 15 games of NHL experience. I thought that was irresponsible. And the Predators did it anyway. So David Poile has a press conference today. First time you can ask him about the expansion draft. And I got the first question. Here's what I asked, and here's what he said. Take a listen.
Can you take us through why you would protect Jeannot over a guy like Yarncroke, who has contributed so much for so long, or a guy like Sissons, obviously? And how is the relationship with Sissons after not being protected?
Again, with all due respect, you don't know as much as I know in terms of what I truly believed and knew was going to happen in this expansion draft from talking to Seattle. I think our younger players, you mentioned Jeannot's name, which is a good name. Another name is Carrier as a young defenseman. Both of these players came from Milwaukee. Both of these players were not particularly ticketed to play a lot of games for us this year, and both of those players played very important parts in our team as the year, especially in the second half of the season, where Carrier played with Yossi in the top pairing. Jeannot, Sissons, Trent, and Olivier formed what we called our identity line, herd line, if you will. They were our fourth line. But I think everybody who was watching this closely saw that they played in a lot more valuable situations than our third line. And I think they're a big part of what we have going forward.
Okay, right there. So I understand the idea that he values that fourth line, which we'll discuss. But the part there at the beginning, with all due respect, I know more than you. Twitter has exploded over that. Now, I did not take that as a shot personally when he said that. But am I misreading it? What do you think? Do you think that David Poile was launching a crack at me with that answer? Do you think, what do you make of that question? Because I feel like my response doesn't really change much based upon that, but maybe I should be worked up about that.
Well, it was a question that needed to be asked because in reading articles in The Athletic, ESPN.com, articles throughout the hockey world, whenever mentioning that the Predators protected Tanner Jeannot, everyone always said, oh, this was a surprising protection pick. Sure. This was something that we didn't expect from the Predators. So, of course, you have to ask, if this was not what we expected, why did you do it? What was your thought process? I think that was a question that meant to be asked. Now, with David Poile saying, with all due respect, I know more than you do. First of all, I hope so. I hope that David Poile knows more about the Predators
and I would agree with that
than you do.
But I'm wondering,
how I feel about his intention.
Do you think it was like a personal, Jared, you've been on my rear end for forever, so now let me try to shoot you down a little bit? Or do you think it was hey, I know that Seattle would have taken Jeannot, and I know that this, and I know, do you think it's that, or do you think it is the personal in nature, I'm better than you shot?
I don't think it was a shot. I don't think it is something that he would have said to anyone else. But I don't think that it was a shot towards you. I don't think that was his way of saying, hey, look, Jared, I've heard what you've been saying about this team, and I'm going to be mad at you, and I'm going to embarrass you. I don't think that was his intention at all. I think that he would only address you like that. And, interpret that how you will. But personally, I don't think it was anything negative toward you. But I think it was hey, I'm the general manager. I know what I know.
Max, what do you think?
No, I think it was just saying that he knew what Seattle was going to do if they didn't protect Jeannot, and that meant that they were probably going to take Jeannot. I think that's what he was saying.
So I kind of feel the same way. So when Twitter's all worked up about, yeah, David Poile, you're the man, I didn't read into that as like a personal shot. Now, when John Hines takes out his piece of paper and starts reading verbatim on the day of Game 6, that I took as a
felt
personal
a little
shot.
personal.
Which the more I thought about it, the more embarrassed I am that the head coach of an NHL team on the day of Game 6 is writing out notes for how to respond to a question that I'm going to ask, which he knew I was going to ask. Like, that I think about, and I'm like, maybe prepare for coaching? Maybe a little bit more? But that's neither here nor there. I didn't take Poyle's answer as a personal shot. I didn't. When I heard it, I didn't think of anything. And then Joe Rexrow tweeted it, and then all of a sudden, I just started getting all these tweets, and they're like, yeah, you tell him, David, you're the man. And I think what's funny is, like, aren't we allowed to be a little critical? Like, to the fans. Like, I get it. I'm not everybody's cup of tea, but obviously enough people enjoy it because they listen every day, because our show is incredibly popular. So I don't, clearly they listen because he's clearly under his skin. But I listen to this and I think to myself, the fans are missing the boat on this. David Poyle just told you he values the contributions of the fourth line last year over the contributions of the third line. What? He takes that identity line. And I've told you before the playoffs, that line's not going to win you a game. Yakov Trenin had 2 goals in Game 5 at Carolina, and you lost. That line was excellent in that Game 5, and you still lost. When you won your games, you were winning because of Matt Duchene scoring in overtime. You were winning because of Ryan Johansson. Like, when you win, that's why you win. You score because of Forsberg. You win because of Yossi. You win because of those guys. You're not going to win because of your fourth line. You might win a game here or there because of your fourth line, just like when the Predators went to the Cup final and they got a game winner from Cody McLeod and a goal from Harry Zolnarchuk and a game winner from Pontus Aberg. But you're not going to end up winning the Cup doing that. You're never going to do that. So, if I'm a fan, and I view the media's job, this is why I ask questions at press conferences. I view the media's job as holding those in power accountable. That's what the First Amendment is for. And I believe in looking at how I think you guys feel, you the fans, and going into these press conferences and asking David these questions. Max brought it up before we came on air. You got people asking questions about the amateur draft that deep down inside, I'm not sure that many fans care about, as compared to whether or not you're going to keep Calle Yarncroke over Tanner Jeannot. I think more people care about that than care about the other side of it. So anybody can answer any question however they want to. I mean, I've had coaches that have wanted to make it personal. I've had Ken Wisenhunt that wanted to make it personal. I've had John Hines pull out the piece of paper and start lecturing me or whatever on the question he knew he was going to be asked. I've had that. And again, that doesn't bother me either. I'm not going to be bullied by anybody in town as to what questions to ask or what not to ask. But I still, when I saw the reaction to this, I think people are reacting to the wrong part, which is that he's telling us with the I know more than you know, he's telling us he thinks they would have taken Tanner Jeannot. And I just have to say, I disagree. I disagree. Just like when they kept the group together at the trade deadline, and I couldn't believe it. And I had to say, hey, I disagree. And now I still got it from the text line and people that would say, when we're sitting there talking about making the playoffs and this is a big game for the playoffs and that's not, and people would say, Jared, you gave up on this team at the deadline. Right, because we're moving forward. But as I said, I disagree. And so when I asked David Poyle the question and Poyle said, I know more than you do, I did not interpret that as, well, I am the general manager and I know more than you know, Jared. I didn't interpret it like that, though I think a lot of people want to interpret it like that.
Yeah, I thought it was funny. I told you I went back and I was like, but I didn't think it was anything that was malicious or anything targeting you.
No, I mean, I didn't feel that way either. I mean, and again, to your point, that he wouldn't have probably said that to Adam Vingan if he had asked. He probably wouldn't have said it to Joe if he asked. He probably wouldn't have said it to Robbie Stanley if he had asked it. Well, I mean, that's the territory that comes with being the one who is outspoken. That is what comes with being the one who moves the needle. That comes with being the one who, though no disrespect to Robbie and Joe, because you look at how that morning show's doing, they are moving that needle. But, I mean, that's what comes with being the guy who is not worried about how people feel. I have never been worried about how a coach or a general manager here in town cares. You know, like, well, I don't want to upset this guy, so I'm not going to say that. Never really worried about that. And I think about it like this. I want the Predators to win. I want the Titans to win. I want them all to win. And it is good for our bottom line and our business if they do win. So I am supportive of that. But if you're going to coach my team or you're going to run my team, I'm going to get in your ass now. Like, I'm going to, if I don't understand something, I am going to ask why. And a lot of radio people around the country get the reputation. Radio guys in general have the reputation of you get on the mic, you say whatever you want to say, and you don't face the music, you don't ask the questions, you don't. And I've never felt like that's fair. Never felt like that's fair to a coach, a general manager, a player. I just don't think that that's the right way to go about it. So, I mean, I hear what David Poyle said about the decision to keep Jeannot over Yarncroke, but I vehemently disagree with it. And I'm never not going to disagree with it unless Tanner Jeannot comes out next year and lights it up. You know, if Tanner Jeannot becomes a solid contributor for the next 6 years, then David had a point. If Tanner Jeannot is what I think he is, which is a replacement level player that brought some good energy, but quite frankly, you know, next year he'll just be whatever, and then he'll be gone in 2 years like everybody else.
But how do you know that? We've only seen 15 games from him.
How do I know that?
How do you know that he will continue to be a fourth line, what you say is a
replacement
replacement level player?
Because everything about his career up into those 15 games would point to him being a replacement level player. Even his performance in the playoffs would point to him as a replacement level player. Remind me of one thing he did during the playoffs this year against Carolina.
I don't know.
I can give you all kinds of things that Nick Cousins did. I can tell you everything. It's like Carrier. I like Carrier, but everybody's all about, Carrier proved he is. Well, I mean, let's see. People forget Carrier turned the puck over that led to the game-winning goal in Game 5 at Carolina. Like, you're gonna be a top pair defenseman with Roman Josi. You're gonna have to take care of that puck now. Like, so those are I cannot do a show. There are plenty of them in Nashville, other radio stations especially. There are plenty of shows that will suck up to the teams around town. I can't do it. I will not do it. It's not who I am. Like, you and I talked about this, Caroline, before the show. Like, I'm a critical thinker. And I said to you, sometimes maybe being a critical thinker, sometimes I wish I wasn't so critical all the time of everything. But I also think that's what you need to hold your teams accountable. I mean, I think Jeff Fisher, no disrespect to anybody who was in the media at that point, but Jeff Fisher, I think, overstayed his welcome as coach of the Titans because people didn't challenge him enough. And so, to me, I'm not going out of my way to point out things I disagree with. I wish they'd make every move that I would want them to make. But I understand that some moves I'm going to be wrong and some moves they're going to be wrong. And, worry that maybe we're getting in the habit of too many moves they're wrong about, I'm right about. But I did not take that personally. And I guess, I don't know, Twitter tells me I should, but I don't take it personally.
I don't think you should. And I don't think that David Poyle has a malicious personality that would be coming out to attack you based off of a question. It's a pretty valid question. I don't think that you should take it personally.
Max?
I'm with you.
There we go. 615-737-1025. You agree with his response, though, about why he kept Jeannot over Yarncroke?
Well, I mean, he said he valued Jeannot's age that is one of his priorities, is keeping the team young. So if that's what you're looking at, then okay. I still don't agree with the decision to keep Jeannot over Yarncroke. But he said he values youth. And that's what he did.
Max?
I just don't think it should really have changed the decision because either they wanted to keep Jeannot or they didn't. Even if he did know that's who they were going to take. Either they wanted to keep him or they didn't.
So I think, that's the thing I think. Because if I'm Seattle and I really want somebody, aren't I going to tell you that I'm going to take the other guy?
Probably.
Okay. So if I'm Seattle and I really want Yarncroke, wouldn't I make it obvious to you that I'm not that interested in Yarncroke? Like, wouldn't I make it obvious that, oh my God, I gotta have Carrier. I got to have Carrier or I got to have Jeannot. What do I got to do to have one of those guys? And deep down inside, I don't want either. Because I'm hoping you expose Fabro, or I'm hoping you expose Yarncroke, or I'm hoping you expose somebody else. And I wonder if I know because Seattle told me, and I'm like, do you think Seattle was being straight up with you?
And I didn't talk to Seattle, but from the get-go, before the Predators protected list came out, it was pretty obvious that they were either going to take Yarncroke or Sissons.
I mean, that's what common sense
or
said.
Trennan. That was another third name that was thrown around there. But general consensus was they were going to take Yarncroke or Sissons.
I'm not saying that I think that they got hoodwinked on this, but I don't think Seattle's taking Tanner Jeannot. And to Max's point, even if they are, I don't care if they take him. But this is going to be one that we're going to be following on David now. Because if Tanner Jeannot doesn't play a role next year, if he doesn't matter next year, if he's a fourth-line replacement level player and him and Olivier and Michael McCarron and all those other, bottom-of-the-roster Milwaukee guys, if they're shuffling around, then then we are going to be pointing a finger at David for that. We should point a finger at David for that.
And I told you yesterday that I wasn't expecting, but I was hoping for David Poile making a deal, that maybe he protected Tanner Jeannot for an ulterior motive, that there was a team that he was in talks with that wanted Jeannot and could maybe take one of the $8 million contracts off of the Predators' books. But he was asked about that today, and he said Seattle wasn't interested in making a deal.
Of course they weren't interested in making a deal. They don't want players you don't want. 615-737-1025. We'll get to your reaction. 615-737-1025. Plus another question I asked David Poile that I think we got to break down too from the press conference. And we'll get to your reaction as well. Live from the Wholesaling Studio, powered by RumbleOn.com. Stillman & Company. We are delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN.